Hi, and welcome back to English Lessons with Stephanie. This is Grammar Lesson 3 on transitive and intransitive verbs. Let's start with what you already know. What is wrong with these sentences? I want a sandwich for lunch, so I'll make. My teacher gave us homework, but I forgot to do. Yesterday, I called to my mother to wish her a happy birthday. There's something wrong with each one of these sentences. We'll return to those sentences in just a minute. What are transitive verbs? So transitive verbs, of course, are verbs. Remember that verbs from Grammar Lesson 1 are action words. And these verbs are followed by objects. Objects are usually nouns. And also from Grammar Lesson number 1, we learned that nouns are things. So for example, in this first sentence, the baseball player hit the ball. We see the verb hit, which is in green, and the ball, which is in maroon or purple. And the object is the ball, and the verb is hit. So because hit is followed by an object, hit we'd say is a transitive verb. The same with the second sentence, he tells lies. So because lies follows the verb tells, we can tell that tell is a transitive verb. Similarly with the last sentence, Elena saw a movie. So saw is the past tense of see, and the movie is the object, so saw or see is also a transitive verb. In the yellow box, it tells us that transitive verbs are not followed by prepositions. So in these three sentences in the yellow box, we see verbs and we see objects, but between the verb and the object, we see prepositions in purple. Prepositions, remember, are short words that describe relationships to words. And some prepositions are to, like, with, in, about, for, at, out, words like that. So in the first sentence, the baseball player ran to first base. Even though there's a verb followed by an object first base, there's a preposition in between them, to. So first base is actually not a direct object, it's an indirect object. And same with the second sentence, he talked with his friends. And the third sentence, Elena thought about a movie. So because of the prepositions, these are not transitive verbs. They are intransitive verbs. So, what are intransitive verbs? Well, intransitive verbs are not followed by objects. So, take a look at these sentences. In these sentences, we have verbs. The first is the baseball player ran fast, or he laughed for a long time, or Elena is tired, or we looked at the clock. So, after these words, we have words that are not objects. Fast. Fast is not an object. For a long time is not an object. It's not a thing. Tired, also not a thing. Can you guys remember what kind of word tired is? It's not a noun, but an adjective because it describes Elena. Or in the last sentence, again, we have a preposition before the object. So these are intransitive verbs. On the right, you have a list of some of the common intransitive verbs like be, exist, live, die, look, listen, call, talk, come, go, cry, laugh, sleep, appear, and arrive. Of course, there are many, many more intransitive verbs. And this just means that when you use these verbs, it's not necessary to have a word right after them. So the reason why we care about whether verbs are transitive or intransitive are so that we can use the verbs correctly when we're speaking and writing. Whenever we go over verbs in our vocabulary lessons, I always tell you whether they're intransitive or transitive verbs, because it's important to know so that you can use these verbs correctly. So, of course, we do have verbs that can be both transitive or intransitive. So, for example, in the first one, read. My mother loves to read. There's no object after that. Or, my mother loves to read science fiction. Both of these sentences are correct, so that means read can be used as a transitive or an intransitive verb. In the second set of sentences, the bus stopped, or the driver stopped the bus. Again, there could be no object after stop or an object. And the last sentence is David woke up at 6 o'clock or David woke the baby at 6 o'clock. They're both correct because woke can be used as a transitive or intransitive verb. Okay, so you might be wondering, well, how can you tell if a verb is transitive or intransitive? This is when you should use a dictionary. So the dictionary I always recommend is Merriam-Webster, which is online. You can see that down here beneath the definition, it says transitive verb. If you look it up in a other kind of dictionary, sometimes they use an abbreviation. So they'll use VT for transitive verb or VI for intransitive verb. Those are the abbreviations that I use in our vocabulary lessons. So if you're unsure if a verb is transitive or intransitive, use a dictionary or listen to how the word is used. If you always hear people say, oh, I can't do that. Well, do, they always say do that. They never say, oh, I can't do. So do is a transitive verb. Okay, so let's go back to our sentences that we first looked at and see if we can figure out what's wrong with them. So remember we had the sentence, I want a sandwich for lunch, so I'll make. What's wrong with this sentence? Well, make is a transitive verb, so we have to follow make with an object. We have to say, I want a sandwich for lunch, so I'll make one. So I'll make a sandwich. Our next sentence was, my teacher gave us homework, but I forgot to do. So what did I just say? I said that do is also a transitive verb, which means we need to put an object after it. So easy to fix. My teacher gave us homework, but I forgot to do it. Finally, we had the sentence, yesterday I called to my mother to wish her a happy birthday. This one is a little harder, but let's find the verb in this sentence. And we see that the verb is called. And it says, I called to my mother. We know that call, we need to call someone, but there is an extra word in here, that preposition. So we don't say I called to someone. We say I called my mother. I called her. We don't say I called to her. So to make this sentence correct, remove the preposition. So let's practice. Are these transitive verbs or intransitive verbs? Caroline led the meeting this morning. So first of all, again, we have to find the verb. And the verb in this sentence is led. So because there's an object right after led the meeting is a noun, led is a transitive verb. Here's another sentence. These vegetables are growing so fast. So first, identify the verb. Here the verb has a helping verb. The verb is are growing. And what do we see after growing, the verb? We see so fast. Is this an object? Nope. So this is not a transitive verb. It's intransitive. We will leave for the soccer game in an hour. So where's our verb? Here our verb also has a helping verb. It's will leave. And after will leave, we have a preposition, for. So this is, again, not a transitive verb. It's intransitive. Okay, so to review, we've got verbs, and they can be transitive, intransitive, or both. Transitive verbs are followed by objects. Intransitive verbs are not followed by objects, and sometimes they're followed by prepositions. And verbs can be transitive, intransitive, or both. And to know whether they are transitive or intransitive, you have to pay attention to the verbs and use a dictionary. Okay, so that was a quick introduction to transitive and intransitive verbs. This will become important later when we learn how to make the passive voice and other types of verb tenses. So that's it for today. If you're enjoying English Lessons with Stephanie, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe. See you next time.